built tough with Chinese stuff. After the completion of Cleetus McFarland's budget racing on Sick Week, this is probably the best time I've ever seen to talk about Chinese parts, budget racing, and what it means for all of us and what it's done for all of us over the last couple of years, especially with what's going on in the world right now. Now, I promise you, I'm going to do my very best to not get confrontational and not get any kind of political conversation really going on this thing, but I want to talk about the reality of Chinese car parts and where we are as an industry and as a hobby right now. So, this is a Chinese war whistle. Right there. That is a turbo for this 5.3 liter LS motor that's under the hood of our redneck race truck. You guys have probably never ever seen this. It's been kind of one of those abandoned projects that's been sitting in the backyard, and yes, it has a giant 5-inch exhaust coming out of the hood. But what I want to use that for is for a conversation about where we are with race cars right now and what it is that has driven cheap car racing over the last bunch of years. Now, anybody who's paid attention to me and my conversations about race cars and that kind of stuff knows that I have kind of a little bit of a dislike for E85. And I'm not a gigantic fan of the LS platform because it's just kind of gotten really, really boring. But it's undeniable how much that LS platform has affected the race car industry as a whole. Probably 75% of vehicles you're going to see out there, out and about on racetracks nowadays, at least the budget race vehicles, are built on an LS platform. They're not small blocks and big blocks and all that kind of stuff anymore. They're almost entirely going to be built on turbo platforms on LSs. Something exactly like this. They're built at home. They're built with a budget 5.3 that's got a cam in it maybe, and a couple of small things, maybe some BTR goodies, and it's got a Chinese war whistle on it. And it's got something to be able to control the fuel uppage. That's basically it. And you can go run 10s. It's one of those things that's kind of been a wonderful blessing for those people who want to be able to go out and be competitive in the racing space. Because, let's be honest, it's expensive to make something like, I don't know, a 1968 Pontiac Le Mans. Make that thing run 10s. You understand how much it costs you to be able to make an old school muscle car run 10s? It's not cheap. But if you put an LS under the hood with turbo on it, it is. Now, one of the biggest problems that we're going to see, and what we are seeing currently going on, is prices are starting to rise as companies are worrying about the Chinese tariff-y situation. And again, I don't want to touch on that too much, but it is something that definitely needs to be talked about. It's the fact that a lot of the things that we have right now, and a lot of the reasons that we've been able to go racing on the cheap, is because the Chinese have been building the stuff for us anymore. It is what it is. Let's just acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of cheap Chinese parts that are built, regardless of whose name is on the box or which major corporation is importing said product. A lot of it's coming from China. And that's not necessarily all bad because it's allowed people to go out and go racing. It's allowed people to be able to have fun with their race cars and their pieces of junk with a turbo on them for less expensive than buying a $5,000 precision turbo or something else that's, name brand and really expensive, or something from Garrett. When you can buy one on Amazon or Yandy or Shein or eBay or whatever, it's not going to come probably with a made in the USA sticker on it, but it's probably going to be all right for the most part, and it's probably going to work in your race car for a little while, at least enough for you to go out there and have a good time and go play stuff. So right now we are seeing a lot of companies that are starting to raise prices because of what's going on in the world, and we're worrying about the fact that the Chinese situation is going to kind of go on the south side of things right now. And I want to say 100% up front, I like American-made products. I'm personally somebody who likes to buy American-made. I buy a lot of American stuff. Now, is American-made more expensive? You're darn tootin' it is. It's definitely more expensive. Made in the USA is almost always going to be expensive because we pay our people more money to be able to work on stuff that we do here. It's just how it is. We don't pay pennies on the dollar to be able to build something. We pay legitimate wages here in the United States to be able to build stuff. So yes, our products are more expensive, and I would love to see more of that production return back to the United States and encourage people to buy stuff. The problem is the cost of being able to buy it is not competitive when you price it against something cheap like that. This turbo was like $400. Or if I buy a US version of it, it's like $2,000. If you're running on a budget, if you're balling on a budget, and you don't have the ability to do that, You can't pull it off. So that's something to really, really be cognizant of. The other thing is, and this is the painful lesson we all learned back in the plague years of about 5 years ago at this point, 6 years ago at this point in time, is refining and raw resource materials are almost entirely controlled outside the United States. So let me paint you a picture. If you go back 5 years ago or so, you have an American company that makes, let's say, aluminum cylinder heads. Great, they're an American company, their foundries are here, they do all their work here. The problem is they don't have the ability to source their raw materials here. Even if we pull it out of the ground here, which we probably don't, we cannot refine it here. It is refined overseas, and the lion's share of that is going to be done in China. So let's say this is somebody from somewhere here in the United States, no name said. Even if they build this turbo here in the United States, the aluminum that's refined, that they need to be able to make this housing, is probably not made here. If you look on the grand scheme of things about where aluminum is made, where it's refined, we're number 10 on the list. And I bet you could probably figure out who's number 1 on that list. Now, I would love to see American manufacturing coming back. As I said, I like buying American. I drive almost entirely American-made cars, and I like buying good products. I like supporting American businesses and American small businesses especially. We are one. I want to see that be possible. But I also want us to all understand the fact that we are a very complicated supply chain. We all should have learned that lesson during the COVID years. When that happened and the entire supply chain broke down all over the place, even if you were an American-made company, if you built American products, the problem is somewhere along that supply chain, there's a chink. Ooh, bad use of words. There's a notch in the armor where you're not getting something that's made in the United States. Somewhere in that supply chain, somewhere it's a raw material, it's a refining piece, it's a cutting piece, it's a bending piece, it's a hydraulic piece, it's a something that's not built here in the United States. There's some little bit that needs to be done that's not built here. And that's where we get that interdependence situation where we cannot build it. I would love to see us be able to do this, to be able to take a budget race car build and build it on completely American parts. I would love to be able to see that. Maybe somebody else who's got deeper pockets than I do can pull that off, but it's not really easily done. And it doesn't matter whose parts you're buying, whose name is on the box, and where you're getting your stuff from. Even though it says American made, realize the fact that there are a lot of other things that go into that to be able to make that piece, that part, that little ability for you to go out racing. Now, this car, obviously, I'm going to keep it old school. I'm going to keep it Pontiac cast iron block. I'm going to keep it Pontiac cast iron heads. But I am going to put some aluminum bits on it. It's going to have an aluminum intake manifold. It's going to have aluminum water pump. It's going to have aluminum all kinds of things. And while a lot of that stuff is going to be made in the USA, a lot of it just honestly can't be. It just isn't here. Now, it's going to be a long road to hoe if we decide to get back to that point where we build things here in the United States. When it comes to car parts, you also have to realize that it may not necessarily be financially feasible to build things here in the United States because it is more expensive. How many pieces and parts that are for a 1968 Pontiac is a company going to sell? Does it make financial sense for that American small business to pay American wages to be able to build a couple of intake manifolds for some Pontiac moron versus just to outsource it somewhere else to be able to build it? So at least the part exists. Whereas if we build it here and it doesn't make financial sense, nobody's going to build it. It's a complicated conversation, and I think a lot of people need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and realize that this whole thing is a lot more complicated than just rah, let's build it in America. It's very, very complicated. Now, over the past longer than my life, we have seen this offshoring of things happen. We have seen this production shifting overseas thing. And by and large, I personally think our independence on other countries to be able to build raw materials is a gigantic national security issue. I think we should be able to build steel here. I think we should be able to build aluminum here. I think we should be able to build all of the things that we need to be able to run our economy more or less either here or in close concert with our very, very close allies like those folks, nice folks to the north. We should be able to rely on them to be able to build the things that we don't build. Where you don't want to get caught is when you're being reliant on somebody that isn't reliable or that you're at odds with to be able to get your materials or get your parts from. Because we've seen it. We knew exactly how this works. If you tried to build a race car or anything fun back in the COVID years, it sucked. You couldn't buy parts for crap. You were scouring Facebook Marketplace, trying to find old stuff, rehashing what you could. You were trying to hot rod as best you possibly could, but you couldn't get a hold of parts. And it's exactly what we have possibly going on now. If we end up in a situation where we end up with a tit-for-tat situation with those guys that produce all of our raw materials, it can get pretty messy. And I'm really not excited about that. And we need to realize the fact that a lot of what we have right now is because of cheap Chinese car parts. If all these old Fox bodies that are out there blasting down the track running turbo LSs, if we didn't have a cheap start to that process, if you couldn't build that car for $10,000 or less, you wouldn't be out there racing. You wouldn't be running those kind of things. It's not possible. And if it wasn't for cheap Chinese car parts, none of us would be enjoying what we're doing right now. Now, I understand this has probably gotten you a little hot under the collar, and I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands that we've got ourselves in a little bit of a pickle right now. We've got to really carefully negotiate this situation. I would love to see all this stuff come back to the United States, but we just need to be realistic about the fact that some of it honestly probably can't. And some of it honestly, it's probably best that it doesn't. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. This is just kind of some random Wednesday afternoon musings. Let me know. I love you. Thanks for being here. This is Automotive Adventures with Austin, my own little personal corner of the YouTube internets while I work on some of my own stuff and have these automotive ramblings and have some of my own project stuff. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Flame Suit is activated. I do truly appreciate all of you guys that have helped me grow this channel to where we are right now, and I'm very much excited about where we're going to be here in the future. I will continue to provide as much classic car and old school American content as I can afford, and I hope you guys will continue to watch it. If you've been here before, thank you very much. If this is your first video, welcome aboard. Great to have you here. If you're interested in this kind of thing, and if you like me, because you'll see a lot of me on this channel, click on the subscribe button. That's it. That's all there is to it. Take care. I love you. Bye-bye.